"Don't touch that." The voice was sharp enough to stop everyone in the room. The little boy froze instantly. His hand was still resting on the corner of the old wooden picture frame. He couldn't have been more than 6 years old. For a moment nobody moved. The housekeeper standing beside him looked horrified. The guests at the dining table exchanged uncomfortable glances. And the billionaire who owned the mansion slowly lifted his head from the other end of the room. Because the boy hadn't touched just any picture. He had touched the one thing nobody in that house was ever allowed to touch. And what happened next would uncover a secret that had been buried for nearly 5 years. Hey everyone. Before we begin today's story, tell me where you're watching from. I always love seeing how many different places these stories reach. And if you enjoy stories that make you think a little deeper about people, family, and the things we miss when we're moving too fast through life, or just emotional stories with life lessons, make sure you hit subscribe. Today's story starts with a picture frame, but by the end, you'll realize it was never really about the picture. Let's begin. Some homes are so beautiful, they almost feel unreal. The Mercer estate sat on a hill overlooking the city. 3 stories tall, white stone walls, massive windows, gardens that looked perfect no matter the season. People drove past the gates every day just to look at it. From the outside, it seemed like the kind of place where nothing bad could ever happen. Inside, it was much quieter, much lonelier, especially for Owen Mercer. At 34 years old, Owen had everything most people spent their lives chasing: money, success, influence, and respect. His technology company had grown faster than anyone expected. Business magazines called him a visionary. Investors called him a genius. Employees called him demanding. But none of those words described who he became when he walked through the front door every night. Because every evening, he came home to a house that felt much larger than it should. A house full of empty rooms. 7 years earlier, Owen had been engaged. Everyone knew that part. The newspapers had covered it. The business blogs had talked about it. People online had obsessed over every detail. Then one day the engagement ended. No explanation. No interview. No statement. Just over. And after that, Owen stopped talking about his personal life altogether. Most people assumed he simply moved on. Most people were wrong. There was one room inside the mansion that nobody entered. Not the cleaners. Not the staff. Nobody. A small library on the 2nd floor. The door remained locked almost every day. Inside sat a single photograph. A photograph Owen never threw away. A photograph he never stopped looking at. Not because he couldn't move on, but because he never understood what happened. Life continued anyway. It always does. And 3 years ago, another person arrived at the Mercer estate. A woman named Elena. She applied for a housekeeping position. Nothing unusual about that. The estate employed dozens of people. Gardeners, drivers, security staff, chefs, housekeepers. Elena was simply another employee. Or at least that's what everyone believed. She was 28 years old. Quiet and reliable. The kind of person who somehow made everyone's day easier without drawing attention to herself. Within a few months, every employee liked her. The gardeners saved extra flowers for her. The kitchen staff shared recipes with her. The security guards greeted her by name. Even Owen noticed her. Not because she tried to stand out, but because she worked hard, kept to herself, and always seemed to be carrying a small boy with curious eyes and messy dark hair. His name was Noah. Whenever school wasn't open, Noah stayed close to his mother. He spent afternoons coloring pictures in staff rooms, building towers from cardboard boxes, asking questions about absolutely everything. The staff adored him. Even the people who claimed not to like children somehow ended up smiling whenever Noah appeared. There was something unusual about him. He remembered everything. Names, dates, tiny details people forgot mentioning. Once he remembered a gardener's birthday after hearing it only once. Another time he reminded a chef about an ingredient she had forgotten. People joked that Noah noticed more than most adults. Nobody realized how true that was. Least of all, Owen Mercer. Because Noah had been noticing Owen too. Children see things adults miss. The way someone sighs when they think nobody is listening. The way their smile disappears the second a conversation ends. The way loneliness hides behind success. Noah noticed all of it. And one rainy afternoon, he asked his mother a question she wasn't prepared to answer. Why does Mr. Mercer always look sad? Elena nearly dropped the laundry basket she was carrying. She looked down at her son. What do you mean? He looks sad. He said. No, he doesn't. Noah's mom Elena responded. Yes, he does. Children can be brutally honest. Noah shrugged. He smiles with his mouth, but not with his eyes. For a second Elena couldn't speak. Because she had noticed exactly the same thing. Every single day. And because deep down she knew something else. She knew why. She had known from the very first day she walked through those gates. The truth was something she carried alone. A truth she never planned to tell anyone. Especially not Owen. Because some secrets become heavier the longer you keep them. And Elena had been carrying hers for almost 7 years. The secret began long before the mansion. Long before Noah. Long before any of this. It began on a crowded train station platform during a storm. And if Owen ever discovered what happened that night, everything would change. Everything. But for now, she simply smiled at her son. Finish your drawing. Noah nodded. But he kept thinking about Mr. Mercer. And the sadness hiding behind his eyes. The sadness that somehow felt strangely familiar. The kind of sadness that was waiting for something. Or someone. To finally come home. The strange thing about secrets is that they rarely stay hidden because of one big mistake. Most of the time, they unravel because of 100 tiny moments nobody notices until it's too late. For Elena, those moments were beginning to add up. It started with little things. Noah asking questions. Owen paying more attention than usual. The staff making casual observations that seemed harmless on the surface. And every time one of those moments happened, Elena felt the same knot tighten in her chest. The knot she had been carrying for 6 years. The one she thought she could manage forever. One afternoon, Owen was working from home. That wasn't unusual. He spent most of his time moving between conference calls, meetings, and endless decisions that seemed important to everyone except him. But that day, something distracted him. Laughter. Real laughter. Coming from the garden. He looked through the window. Noah was running across the grass. 2 gardeners were pretending to chase him. The boy was laughing so hard, he could barely stay on his feet. For reasons Owen couldn't explain, he stopped working and watched. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. An entire conference call passed while his attention drifted back to the garden. When the meeting finally ended, he remained standing at the window, watching. The feeling was unfamiliar. Not uncomfortable. Just unfamiliar. As if he was looking at something he had been missing without realizing it. Down at the garden, Noah suddenly looked up. For a brief second their eyes met through the glass. Then the boy waved. A big enthusiastic wave. The kind children give without wondering whether it's appropriate. Owen hesitated. Then he waved back. Noah grinned. And for the first time in weeks, Owen found himself smiling for real. Not the polite smile he used in meetings. Not the practice smile photographers captured. A real one. The kind that appears before you realize it's happening. Upstairs in the hallway, Elena saw the entire exchange. And her stomach dropped. Because Noah wasn't supposed to become important to Owen. That had never been part of the plan. The plan was simple. Work. Save money. Raise her son. Stay invisible. Leave before anyone asked questions. Instead, every day seemed to pull them closer together. And Elena had no idea how to stop it. A week later, another small moment happened. One that seemed meaningless at first. The Mercer estate hosted a charity dinner every year. Business leaders. Politicians. Local organizations. Dozens of guests. The house was busy for days preparing. Everyone had extra responsibilities. Including Elena. The evening arrived. The mansion filled with expensive suits and polished smiles. Conversations floated through every room. Laughter echoed off the marble walls. From a distance, everything looked perfect. But perfection is usually just a carefully managed illusion. Around 8 o'clock, one of the kitchen staff realized a tray of desserts had been left upstairs. A simple mistake. Noah happened to be nearby. I can get it, he offered. The chef smiled. Just be careful. Noah nodded and hurried off. Nobody thought twice about it. Why would they? He knew the house better than most people. What nobody realized was that he took a wrong turn. One hallway became another. One staircase became 2. And before he knew it, Noah found himself standing in front of a door he had never seen before. The library. The locked room. Except tonight, for the first time in months, the door wasn't fully closed. It sat slightly open. Noah was curious. Children usually are. He pushed gently. The door moved. Inside, the room felt different from the rest of the mansion. Quieter. Older somehow. The shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. Books covered every wall. Dust floated through strips of golden light. And on a small wooden table near the window sat a single photograph. Noah walked closer. The woman in the picture was smiling. Young, beautiful and happy. The frame looked worn from being handled so often, as if someone picked it up every day. Noah stared at it, then frowned, because the woman looked familiar. Not familiar in the way strangers sometimes do. It looked really familiar, like someone he had seen before. His eyes narrowed. He leaned closer, trying to understand why. That's when footsteps echoed from the hallway. Noah turned. Owen stood in the doorway. The room went silent. For a second, neither of them spoke. Most people would have immediately apologized. Most people would have backed away. Noah simply pointed at the photograph. Who is she? The question landed harder than he intended. Owen's expression changed instantly. Not anger. Something sadder. For a moment, Noah thought he had done something wrong. Then Owen crossed the room slowly. He looked at the photograph, the same way someone might look at an old wound. Carefully, as if it still hurt. Someone I used to know. Noah considered that answer. Children have a way of knowing when adults are avoiding the truth. You miss her. It wasn't a question. Owen looked down at him. The boy's face was completely serious. Completely sincere. And somehow that made the words harder to ignore. Yeah, Owen said quietly. I do. Noah nodded. Then he asked something nobody else would have dared ask. Did she leave? The room became very still. Downstairs, music drifted faintly through the mansion. Guests laughed. Glasses clinked. Life continued. But inside the library, everything felt frozen. Owen looked back at the photograph. The answer wasn't simple. Not after all these years. I don't know, he admitted. And for the first time, he realized it was true. He genuinely didn't know. One day she had been there. The next she was gone. No explanation. No goodbye. Nothing. Just silence. 6 years of silence. Noah studied him, then said softly, maybe she couldn't. Owen blinked. What? Maybe she didn't leave because she wanted to. Noah continued. The words hit harder than either of them expected. Especially because they came from a child. A child who couldn't possibly know how close he had come to the truth. Downstairs, Elena was searching for Noah. Panic was beginning to rise in her chest. She checked the kitchen, the hallway, the staff room, the gardens. Nothing. Then one of the servers spoke. I think I saw him go upstairs. The color drained from Elena's face. Because she knew exactly which door might be open tonight. And if Noah had wandered into that room, everything could change. She moved quickly through the mansion. Past guests. Past waiters. Past conversations she couldn't hear. Her heartbeat pounded louder with every step. When she reached the second floor, she saw the library door standing open. And through the doorway, she saw them. Owen. Noah. The photograph. All in the same room. For one terrifying second, nobody moved. Elena stood frozen in the hallway. Noah turned first. His face lit up. Mama. The sound broke the silence. Owen looked toward the doorway. And something strange happened. Very strange. His eyes moved from Elena to the photograph, then back to Elena again. His expression shifted. Just slightly. A flicker of recognition, gone almost instantly, but not gone fast enough. Elena saw it, and her heart stopped. Because after 6 years, for the very first time, Owen Mercer was beginning to remember. Recognition is a strange thing. Sometimes it arrives all at once. A face, a voice, a memory, everything suddenly clicking into place. But more often, it comes in pieces. Tiny fragments that refuse to leave you alone. That was what happened to Owen Mercer. After the charity dinner ended and the guests finally left, he couldn't sleep. The mansion was quiet. The staff had gone home. The lights had been dimmed. But his mind refused to settle. Again and again, he found himself thinking about Elena standing in the library doorway. Not because she had done anything unusual. Because of the feeling. The strange, impossible feeling that he had seen that expression before. The way she looked when she realized Noah was in the room. The fear. The panic. The protectiveness. It felt familiar. Far too familiar. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Owen found himself back inside the library. The photograph sat where it always did. The young woman smiled from behind the glass. 6 years frozen in time. 6 years of unanswered questions. Owen picked up the frame. Something he had done thousands of times before. But tonight was different. Tonight he noticed something he had somehow never paid attention to. The scarf around her neck. Dark blue. Small silver stitching near one corner. His eyes narrowed. Because only a few hours earlier he had seen Elena wearing a scarf with almost identical stitching. Not the same scarf. But close enough to make him pause. Close enough to make his stomach tighten. That's impossible, he whispered. and yet the thought remained. The next morning, he tried to dismiss it. He buried himself in meetings, reviewed reports, answered emails, made decisions, signed contracts. But every time his attention drifted, it returned to the same question. Why did Elena seem familiar? By lunchtime, he was no closer to an answer. Then Noah accidentally made things worse. Much worse. The boy was sitting in the garden drawing pictures. Owen happened to walk past. "Can I show you something?" Noah asked. Owen smiled. "Sure." Noah held up a crayon drawing. It showed a train station. A woman. A man. Rain falling from the sky. Owen froze. The drawing itself wasn't unusual. What Noah said next was, "My mom likes train stations." Owen's pulse quickened slightly. "Really?" Owen asked as though trying to confirm something inside him. "Yeah." Noah nodded. "She says big things can happen in train stations." The smile vanished from Owen's face. Because 6 years earlier, the last conversation he ever had with the woman he loved happened in a train station. A crowded platform. A storm. A promise to meet again after a business trip. He had never told anyone that detail. Not friends. Not family. Not reporters. Nobody. Yet somehow Noah had just described it perfectly. A chill moved through him. Children repeat things they hear. That was all. It had to be. Still, the coincidence lingered. That evening, Owen did something he hadn't done in years. He opened a storage box hidden in the back of his closet. Inside were pieces of a life he had stopped looking at. Old photographs. Letters. Tickets. Receipts. Memories. Near the bottom sat a worn envelope. The envelope contained the last photograph ever taken of him and the woman from the library picture. He stared at it for a long time. Then something caught his eye. A bracelet. Simple silver. Wrapped around her wrist. His breath stopped. Because Elena wore that exact bracelet every day. Every single day. The realization hit him like a physical force. Not certainty. Not yet. But enough to make his hands shake. The next morning, he watched Elena more carefully than he ever had before. Not in a suspicious way. In a searching way. Trying to understand what his instincts were telling him. Trying to see past the years. Past the exhaustion. Past the life she had built. And slowly, he began noticing things. The way she tilted her head while listening. The way she folded towels. The way she smiled when Noah said something ridiculous. Tiny habits. Tiny details. The kind people don't consciously choose. The kind that survive time. And with every observation, the feeling grew stronger. Meanwhile, Elena was beginning to realize something had changed. She could feel it. The way Owen looked at her now. The questions hiding behind his eyes. The moments where conversations lasted a little too long. The pauses. The observations. The growing attention. For 6 years, she had managed to remain invisible. Now invisibility was slipping away. And she was terrified. Not for herself, but for Noah. Because if the truth came out, everything would change. Everything. If you've enjoyed this story so far, hit the subscribe button for more updates. You can also drop your thoughts so far in the comments. Back to the story. A few days later, another unexpected moment arrived. The kind that seems insignificant until afterward. A storm rolled through the city. Heavy rain. Strong winds. The estate lost power. Only briefly, but long enough to plunge the mansion into darkness. Several staff members gathered candles. Generators kicked in. People moved through the house checking rooms. During the confusion, Noah disappeared. Not intentionally. He simply wandered off exploring. By the time Elena noticed, panic immediately set in. Noah. No answer. She searched the first floor. Nothing. The kitchen. Nothing. The hallways. Nothing. Fear tightened around her chest. The mansion suddenly felt enormous. Then she heard laughter. Coming from upstairs. She followed the sound. One hallway. Then another. Finally reaching the small sunroom at the end of the second floor. The door stood partially open. Elena stopped. Inside sat Noah. And Owen. They were building a tower from wooden blocks. Both completely focused. Neither of them noticed her. For a moment she simply stood there. Watching. Something unexpected happened. The sight hurt. Not because it was wrong, but because it looked right. Far too right. Noah laughed. Owen laughed with him. The sound was warm. Natural and easy. The kind of connection that usually takes years to build. And yet somehow it was already there. Then Noah knocked the tower over. The blocks scattered everywhere. He burst into laughter. Owen shook his head. "You did that on purpose," he said. "No, I didn't." Noah responded. "You absolutely did." "Nope." Their smiles matched. The same crooked grin. The same expression. The same spark. Elena's heart sank. Because for the first time, she saw what everyone else would eventually see. The resemblance. Not obvious enough for strangers, but obvious enough once you knew. And if she could see it, sooner or later, Owen would too. At that exact moment, Noah looked toward the doorway. His face lit up. "Mama." Elena stepped inside, trying to hide her emotions, trying to appear calm, trying to ignore the fear growing larger every day. Owen stood. Their eyes met. For a second neither spoke. Then Owen quietly asked a question. A simple question. The kind that shouldn't have been dangerous, yet somehow was. "Elena, have we met before this job?" The room instantly felt smaller. Noah looked between them, confused. Elena's pulse hammered in her ears. For 6 years, she had prepared herself for many possibilities. This question had always been one of them. And now it was finally here. She opened her mouth. But no words came out, because the truth was standing right in front of her. And for the first time, she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep it hidden. "Elena, have we met before this job?" The question hung in the air, simple and quiet, but powerful enough to make her heart stop. For a moment nobody moved. Noah sat cross-legged on the floor between them, completely unaware that the world around him had just shifted. Elena forced herself to breathe. She had imagined this moment countless times. During sleepless nights, long bus rides, quiet mornings before work. She had rehearsed answers, prepared explanations, built entire conversations in her head. But now that the question was finally here, none of those words seemed to exist anymore. "Why would you ask that?" she said softly. Owen studied her face. Not aggressively, not suspiciously, just carefully. The way someone looks at a puzzle they've almost solved. "I don't know." That wasn't entirely true. He knew exactly why. The bracelet, the train station, the familiar expressions, the impossible feeling that every day around Elena was reminding him of a life he thought had disappeared. But he couldn't say any of that without sounding ridiculous. So he simply shook his head. "It just feels like I've seen you before." Elena felt her stomach tighten. Noah looked between them, then smiled. "My mama knows everybody." The tension cracked slightly. Owen laughed. Elena smiled. And the moment passed, at least on the surface. But both adults knew it wasn't over. Not even close. That evening, after Noah had gone to sleep, Elena sat alone in the small apartment above the estate's garage. Rain tapped softly against the window. The room was quiet. She looked toward the old wooden box hidden inside her closet. For years she had avoided opening it. Tonight she couldn't stop staring at it. Finally she stood, walked across the room, and lifted the lid. Inside were pieces of another life. Photographs, train tickets, birthday cards, memories. At the very bottom sat an envelope. The envelope she hated most. The envelope that changed everything. Elena picked it up. Even after 5 years, the sight of it still hurts. Inside was a single letter. A letter she had read so many times, she practically knew every word by heart. A letter that wasn't supposed to exist. A letter Owen had never seen. Her eyes closed, and the memories came rushing back. 6 years earlier. The train station. The storm. The night everything fell apart. At the time, Owen's company was growing faster than anyone expected. Investors wanted meetings. Partners wanted deals. Everyone wanted a piece of his success. His schedule became chaos. But somehow he always made time for Elena. At least he tried. Then came the business trip. 3 days. That was all. 3 days before they were supposed to start planning their wedding. 3 days before their future officially began. They said goodbye at the station. They kissed. They laughed. They promised to call. Nothing unusual. Nothing dramatic. Just two people in love. Then 24 hours later, everything changed. Because Elena received a visitor. A woman named Victoria Hale. At the time, Victoria was Owen's executive assistant. Professional, polished, and respected. Someone Elena had met only a handful of times. Victoria arrived unexpectedly, and she wasn't smiling. The conversation lasted less than 15 minutes. Yet it changed the course of years. Victoria told her Owen had changed his mind. That he wanted to focus on business. That he wasn't ready for marriage. That he didn't know how to tell her himself. Elena remembered laughing at first. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Owen would never do that. Never. But then Victoria handed her the letter. The one sitting in her hands right now. A letter supposedly written by Owen. A letter ending everything. Elena had read it. Then read it again. Then again. Every word felt wrong. Yet somehow it looked real. The handwriting matched. The signature matched. Everything matched. Victoria had seemed uncomfortable, almost guilty, but she never changed her story. And Elena, heartbroken and humiliated, believed her. A few weeks later she discovered she was pregnant. By then Owen was gone. Not physically, emotionally, or at least that's what she thought. She tried calling, emails, messages, everything. Nothing worked. Every attempt disappeared into silence. Eventually she stopped trying. Not because she wanted to, but because survival became more important. Then Noah arrived. And from that moment forward, her life belonged to him. She closed the letter and placed it back into the envelope. The same question she had asked herself for years returned once again. What if it wasn't true? What if Owen never wrote it? Downstairs, in the main house, Owen was asking himself a very similar question. Because after Elena left the sunroom earlier that day, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Not with her. With the story he had believed for 5 years. The official version had always seemed simple. Elena disappeared. No explanation. No goodbye. No warning. That was the story. The story everyone accepted, including him. Yet the more he thought about it, the less sense it made. Elena had never been careless. Never cruel. Never the kind of person who would vanish without a word. So why had she? For the first time in years, Owen opened his old email archives. Thousands of messages appeared. Contracts. Meetings. Schedules. Years of business records. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Then suddenly he found something. A folder. One he didn't remember creating. The folder was linked to an old assistant account. Victoria's account. His pulse quickened. He opened it. Most of the contents were routine. Travel arrangements. Meeting requests. Scheduling notes. Nothing unusual. Then he noticed something strange. A list of blocked communications. Dozens of entries. Phone calls. Emails. Messages. His eyes narrowed. Because the sender name repeated over and over. Elena. Owen sat completely still. No, that wasn't possible. He opened another file. Then another. Then another. Every document pointed toward the same horrifying conclusion. Messages had been intercepted. Calls had been redirected. Emails had been archived before reaching him. The room suddenly felt cold. Very cold. His heartbeat accelerated. He kept reading. The evidence became impossible to ignore. For 6 years he had believed Elena abandoned him. For 6 years Elena had probably believed he abandoned her. And somewhere between them, someone had made sure neither learned the truth. The realization hit him harder than anything he had experienced in years. Because betrayal hurts. But discovering you've lost 6 years because of a lie, that kind of pain is something else entirely. Across the estate, Elena was finally drifting toward sleep. For the first time all day, the apartment was peaceful. Noah slept soundly. The rain had stopped. Everything was quiet. She had no idea that only a few hundred yards away, Owen Mercer was staring at a computer screen with tears in his eyes. And for the first time in 6 years, he knew 2 things with absolute certainty. First, Elena had never abandoned him. Second, someone had stolen years they could never get back. But she said it wasn't his fault. The room became silent. Completely silent. And suddenly, all the pieces that had been floating separately began moving together. The train station. The blocked messages. The years. The timing. Noah's age. His face. His smile. His expressions. His curiosity. The resemblance. The impossible feeling Owen had been fighting for weeks. It all collided at once. Noah wasn't just connected to Elena's past. He was connected to Owen's. Directly. The realization hit him with such force that he had to grip the edge of the table. Noah noticed immediately. Are you okay? Owen opened his mouth. No words came out. For the first time in years, the billionaire who negotiated million-dollar deals without blinking couldn't form a sentence. Fortunately, he didn't have to. Because another voice answered for him. Noah. Everyone turned. Elena stood in the doorway. Her face had gone completely pale. She had heard enough. Not every word. Just enough. And judging by the look in Owen's eyes, she knew exactly what he had figured out. Noah smiled. Mama. But neither adult moved. The space between them felt charged. 6 years of misunderstandings. 6 years of grief. 6 years of unanswered questions. Standing together in one room. Finally, Owen rose slowly. His eyes never left hers. Can we talk? The cooks immediately found reasons to leave. One by one they disappeared. Within seconds, only 3 people remained. Elena, Owen, Noah. The 3 lives connected by a truth that could no longer stay hidden. Elena looked down at her son. Can you help Mrs. Parker water the flowers outside? Noah nodded. Okay. He jumped off his chair and hurried away. The door closed behind him. Silence settled over the room. For a long moment nobody spoke. Then Owen asked the question. The question that had been waiting 6 years. Is Noah my son? Elena closed her eyes. There it was. No more hiding. No more delaying. No more pretending. When she finally looked up again, tears were already forming. Yes. One word. Soft. Broken. And honest. Yes. Owen felt something inside him shatter. Not from pain, but from the sheer weight of everything he had missed. First birthdays. First steps. First words. Nightmares. Laughter. Questions. Entire years. Gone. Not because he chose to leave, but because someone stole the truth from both of them. Tears filled his eyes before he realized it. I didn't know. His voice cracked. The words barely audible. I know. Elena was crying too now. I know you didn't. For a moment neither moved. Neither spoke. Both overwhelmed by a reality neither had expected to face this morning. Then Owen whispered something that broke Elena's heart completely. What was his first word? The question wasn't dramatic. It was about loss. A father trying to touch one tiny piece of the life he had missed. Elena covered her mouth. Because suddenly she understood what he was really asking. Now what was his first word? Tell me about him. Tell me everything. Tell me every moment I wasn't there. Tell me who my son became while I was looking for answers in all the wrong places. And standing there in the morning sunlight, surrounded by silence, Elena realized something. The hardest part wasn't telling Owen the truth. The hardest part was realizing he had loved them all along. Because if that was true, then neither of them had lost 6 years by choice. They had lost them because somebody else decided they should. And neither of them were prepared for what would happen when the person responsible finally faced the consequences. If you have not yet hit subscribe and you have enjoyed this so far, kindly hit subscribe so you don't miss next upload. Back to the story. The truth changes people. Not always immediately. Not always dramatically. Sometimes the biggest truths arrive quietly, and then spend weeks reshaping everything from the inside out. That was what happened after that morning. Nobody shouted. Nobody stormed out. There were no dramatic speeches. Just 2 people sitting across from each other for hours. Talking. Really talking. For the first time in 6 years. Owen listened. Elena spoke. Then Elena listened. And Owen spoke. Piece by piece, the missing years began filling themselves in. The first doctor's appointment. The sleepless nights. The birthdays. The fears. The tiny victories that parents celebrate even when nobody else notices them. Owen wanted to hear everything. Every detail mattered. A week later, another conversation happened. One neither adult had quite figured out how to prepare for. Noah sat on the garden swing, kicking his feet through the air. The afternoon sun painted long shadows across the lawn. Owen sat beside him, nervous. Far more nervous than any business presentation he had ever given. Children have a way of making honesty unavoidable. For several minutes they talked about nothing important. Clouds. Birds. A squirrel Noah was convinced was secretly spying on people. Then Noah asked the question. The question both adults knew would eventually come. Why are you hanging out with us so much now? Owen looked down, then smiled slightly. Children. Straight to the point. Always. He took a breath. Because I found out something important. Noah tilted his head. What? For a second Owen felt every word he wanted to say get stuck. Then he chose the simplest truth. The truth is. His voice softened. I'm your dad. The swing stopped moving. The world seemed to pause. Noah stared at him. Not shocked. Not frightened. Just thinking. Very carefully thinking. The silence stretched longer than Owen expected. Finally Noah spoke. I know. Owen blinked. What? Noah shrugged. The most casual shrug in human history. I kind of figured. Noah said. You figured? Owen was confused and surprised. Yeah. Asking questions is my thing. For the first time in days, Owen laughed. A real laugh. The kind that catches you by surprise. Noah grinned. I look like you. Noah said to Owen with a smile. You do. Owen accepted. And I asked too many questions. Noah continued. You definitely do. Owen acknowledged with a chuckle. And Mama gets the same face when she's annoyed at both of us. Owen laughed harder. That's probably true. Noah considered everything for another moment. then asked the only question that mattered. Are you staying? The laughter disappeared. Just like that. Because underneath all the curiosity, underneath all the excitement, was the fear every child carries. Will you stay? Owen didn't hesitate. Yes. No uncertainty. No conditions. No hesitation. Just yes. Noah nodded, satisfied, as if that answer was all he needed. Then he leaned against Owen's shoulder, naturally and comfortably, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Owen looked out across the gardens and felt something inside him heal. Not completely. Some losses never heal completely, but enough to finally breathe again. A month later, another chapter quietly closed. They had reached out to Victoria some days back. Victoria Hale agreed to meet. The meeting lasted less than an hour. By then the evidence was overwhelming. The intercepted messages, the blocked calls, the hidden emails, everything. Victoria didn't deny it. In fact, the truth turned out to be smaller and sadder than anyone expected. She had loved Owen, quietly and secretly for years. And when she realized he planned to build a life with someone else, she made a terrible decision. A selfish decision. One she convinced herself would eventually stop hurting. Instead it destroyed lives. Not just Owen's. Not just Elena's. Her own too. By the end of the meeting, she was crying. Not because she had been caught, but because for the first time she fully understood the damage she had caused. Some mistakes can't be fixed. This was one of them. Owen didn't yell. He didn't seek revenge. He simply stood up and walked away. Because there was nothing left to say. The years were gone. No punishment could bring them back. The only thing that mattered now was what came next. And what came next arrived slowly. The way good things often do. One evening became two. Two became 10. Family dinners started feeling normal. Movie nights happened. School projects took over entire weekends. The mansion began changing. Not physically, but emotionally. The rooms felt warmer, livelier, less like a museum, more like a home. And through it all, Noah remained exactly who he had always been. Curious, observant, endlessly fascinated by the world. One evening, several months later, something happened. Something small. The kind of moment most people would miss. The three of them were sitting in the living room. Elena was reading. Owen was pretending to read. Noah was building something from blocks. Suddenly the boy stood up, walked across the room, and disappeared upstairs. A few minutes later he returned carrying something. An old photograph. The photograph from the library. The photograph that had started everything. The one nobody touched. The one connected to so much pain. Noah held it carefully, then placed it on the coffee table, between all three of them. For a moment nobody spoke. The woman in the picture smiled up at them from another time. Another life. A life interrupted by misunderstandings and lies. Then Noah pointed. That picture made everybody sad. Owen swallowed. Yeah. It doesn't have to anymore. The room went quiet. Very quiet. Because sometimes wisdom arrives from places you don't expect. Sometimes it arrives from a little boy holding a photograph. Elena reached for Owen's hand. Owen squeezed hers softly. And together they looked at Noah. At the life they almost missed. At the future they almost lost. And for the first time, the photograph no longer felt like a reminder of what had been taken away. It felt like proof of what had survived. Here is the part of the story that stays with me. Not the betrayal. Not the secret. Not even the reunion. What stays with me is a little boy asking one simple question. Are you staying? Because if we're honest, that's the question so many people carry around every day quietly. Will you stay? Will you notice me? Will you choose me? Will you be here when it matters? Noah asked it directly. Most people never do. And maybe that's why stories like this matter. Not because they're about billionaires or mansions or long-lost families, but because they're about attention, about showing up, about choosing people before it's too late. Owen spent years believing he had lost everything. Elena spent years believing she had been forgotten. And all along, the thing both of them needed most was the truth. The truth finally found them. Through a child. Through a question. Through the simple courage of finally seeing what had been there all along. So here's my question for you today. Who in your life needs to know you're staying? Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's someone you've been meaning to call for weeks. Don't wait too long. Life changes faster than we think. And sometimes the most important thing we can give another person isn't money, success, or advice. Sometimes it's simply our presence. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments what moment connected with you. Was it Noah figuring out the truth before the adults did? Was it Owen learning about the years he missed? Or was it that one simple question? Are you staying? Or something else? Thank you for being here. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you in the next story.